The attic of 17 Willow Street. On the day Marion Hart died, the June sky over New England was excessively blue, as if nature had deliberately staged serenity in front of a house draped in mourning. Lena stood in the sweltering attic of 17 Willow Street in Foxford, Massachusetts, fanning herself with a paper flyer from the local pizza shop. She was here to sort through belongings, to do the tasks people always do after a funeral: sorting, giving away, boxing. And what she had not told anyone searching for things Marion might never have spoken of in her lifetime. Marion's only daughter, that is what people called Lena. And Jack Hart, Marion's husband, a man with broad shoulders and the tidy order of an accountant, was her father. The whole town knew that. Lena knew that too, until the moment she dragged a heavy oak chest from beneath a tarp and unearthed an old hatbox wrapped in newspaper from the Boston Globe, dated 1995. Inside the hatbox was a cream-colored envelope, yellowed, unsealed. On its surface, written in blue ink, "4J open when ready." J could mean Jack, or it could mean someone else. Lena sat cross-legged on the wooden floor, jeans pulled over her knees to avoid dust, and opened the envelope. The letter was written in a soft, looping script, unlike Marion's rigid, ruler-straight handwriting. The first line read, "Dear Jack, I know we said we would never write this down, but I cannot bear to carry it like a pebble in my shoe. She is not your blood. I need you to love her as your own, as I love her. If one day the secret turns itself inside out, remember, it was all for her, for the choice I made that winter at River House." River House. Lena had never heard of it. Inside the envelope was also a faded Polaroid. A newborn wrapped in a hospital blanket, eyes shut, mouth curled in a near smile. On the tiny wrist, a plastic band with faint handwriting, "Baby Parker." Lena froze. Not his blood. Then whose? Marion's? Or someone named Parker? And what was River House? The last item in the envelope was a memo card from the law office of Avery and Company, Cambridge, Massachusetts. On the back, a handwritten phone number in the style of the 1990s. See, Ava promised to keep it sealed. Within the law. She heard Jack's heavy steps downstairs, moving with his list of things to load. Lena slipped the letter and photo back into the envelope and tucked it into her jeans pocket. From Marion, she had learned composure. Tonight, she would need it more than ever. The old neighbor and the flickering stories. The next morning, Lena stopped by the home of Mrs. Whitcomb, the neighbor on the left. A widowed woman with white hair pinned high, always wearing a strand of faux pearls no matter the occasion. She opened the door and hugged Lena longer than usual, the scent of Old Spice mingling with baked apple pie. "Poor girl," she whispered. Marion's passing was light. She always wanted things neat. "You knew, Mom." Lena tried to smile. Mrs. Whitcomb pulled her into the kitchen and poured coffee. "I heard you are heading to Boston." "Yes, I have something to take care of." The woman placed her painted red nails on Lena's hand. "Child." Back in the winter of 1995, there was a young woman living in the back annex of your house. You would not remember, you were too young. They called her Ruth, but I doubt that was her real name. She did odd jobs, cleaned, helped Marion arrange flowers. Very pretty, with eyes. Like yours. Lena's heartbeat quickened. Ruth? Yes. One snowy night, Jack drove someone somewhere. I heard the engine running for a long while. The next morning the house was so silent, as if it had exhaled. After that, Ruth disappeared. Mrs. Whitcomb sipped her coffee, eyes fixed on Lena. I do not tell you this to tangle things further. But houses like yours, so neat, often have a few drawers locked tight. She squeezed Lena's hand once more. Whatever the case, I know Jack loves you. Lena nodded. She knew that too. But love was not an answer to every question. At least, not to the one burning inside her. Ava Patel and the sealed files. The office of Avery and Company sat on Brattle Street in Cambridge, on the second floor of a red brick building with old paned windows. The sign looked newer than the creaky wooden staircase that led up to it. Ava Patel was about 40, her black hair tied neatly in a bun, slim glasses perched on her face. She shook Lena's hand, ushered her inside, and closed the door. On her desk lay a file folder tied with cloth string. "I have been expecting this day," Ava said without preamble. "Marian told me, if, the girl, you came, I was to help, within the boundaries of the law." "The letter said so," Lena replied, her hand instinctively reaching to check that the envelope was still tucked in her jeans pocket. Ava opened the file and slid a paper across the desk. It was a copy of a birth record, not the one Lena had always used in school or job applications. At the top it read, "Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Place of birth, River House, St. Luke's Home. Date November 2nd, 1995. Name, Helena Temporary. Mother, N.A. Father, N/A. River House was a private maternity home," Ava explained, "run by a charitable foundation connected to St. Luke's Church in Boston. In the 1990s, they handled many quiet adoptions. Marian and Jack received you through a private arrangement. Legal, but sealed. I represented your family's side." "And baby Parker?" Lena asked, her throat dry. Ava tilted her head. "In the notes, the name Parker appears during the mother's stay. It is not clear whether it was her real surname or simply an alias. Many young women used pseudonyms to protect themselves. So who was she?" "My biological mother." Ava rested her hand gently on the file, as if holding back a bird about to fly. "This system was designed to stay shut, but sometimes the seams fray. By law, I can't disclose a birth mother's identity unless she consents, or unless the files are legally unsealed. But Marian left something for you." From her drawer, Ava pulled out a dark blue leather journal, the edges worn soft. "Marian gave this to me. She wrote in it for years. But this section, 1994 to 1996, might help you understand. You can take it, if you promise to return it." Lena reached out and received it, feeling as if she were holding something warm and alive. "There is more," Ava said. "Marian once mentioned an old lover. Quote, I do not know details, but I suspect it relates to the adoption." Lena nodded, her head humming. "Thank you, Ava. When you are ready to unseal the records," Ava replied, "come back. I will do everything I can." Marian's journal. Lena opened the journal in her old apartment in Allston, Boston, a place she still kept for short stays in the city while working on design contracts. Summer air drifted through the window, brushing the pages until they trembled. July 1994. Foxford. Thomas wrote me a letter. He says he misses the smell of rain in my hair. I read it and tucked it away. Jack never asks about my letters. We decided, no children, but my body remembers emptiness like a room without furniture. The name Thomas wove like a thread through the following entries. A college love from her Amherst days, severed by practical choices. Marian had taken an administrative job at a public school. Jack opened his accounting office. Thomas chased music with a traveling band before settling to teach. There was one night they reunited when Marian went to Boston for a small concert. We sat on the backstage steps, speaking of roads we had not taken, and I cried, she wrote. The next morning, I went back to Foxford and reorganized the pantry like someone desperate to make herself useful. December 1994. River House. Cold and sterile like a hospital without scent. I met Ruth, at least, that is the name they gave her. Brown eyes, looked about 19. She wanted secrecy, did not want her family to know. We talked about baby names, the way people talk about flowers. I brought her cookies. Jack drove me home. I do not know if I was doing right, or staging a beautiful lie. November 2nd, 1995. The girl was born. I stood by the window and heard her cry burst like a raindrop hitting tin. Ruth looked at me and asked, "Will you love her?" I said yes. She placed the baby in my arms. My hands trembled as if holding a candle in the wind. The next page held a loose slip of paper, an invoice for a contribution to St. Luke's Home and River House. In the margin, penciled words, Ava says, "Keep all receipts." Then came entries about Thomas again. March 1996. Thomas knows. He came to Foxford, stood at the back door, said his life had been a circle, and maybe this was the stop. I told him it was too late. I had Jack, I had the child. He said he too had another child, long ago, somewhere slipped out like a stone. I asked what he did with that truth. He said live on. I closed the door, I lived on. Another child. Lena read the passage over and over, her finger tracing the words, another child, as if touching a scratch on wood. June 1996. Ava called, paperwork complete. Name changed, Hell becomes Lena Hart. I bought a blue floral dress for the girl. I wrote the letter for Jack. I placed it in the hat box. I told myself, one day, she will ask. I must be ready. Lena shut the journal and leaned her head against the wall. Evening light slanted across the room. Somewhere down the alley, someone practiced guitar, repeating the chord progression G, D, E, M, C. Thomas. She did not know his last name, didn't know where he was now, only that his name lived in Marion's handwriting, like a note hidden in the melody. And Ruth, so young. Brown eyes. Gone after that snowy night. Baby Parker. Perhaps Parker was only a borrowed surname. Perhaps it was the key. Perhaps both. Lena texted her closest friend from college, Noah Green, now a reporter for a local paper in Somerville. I need to research something. Could be tied to Riverhouse Street. Luke's, a man named Thomas who was a musician in Boston in the 90s. And a girl named Ruth. Maybe a pseudonym, maybe Parker. Noah replied almost instantly. Hold on. Tonight I will come by. Bringing pizza? Lena smiled. Even standing on the edge of a chasm, there was still a friend who would bring pizza. Noah and the first pieces of the puzzle. Noah arrived carrying a hot pepperoni pizza, a bottle of root beer, and his backpack stuffed with a laptop, notebook, and pens. He had the posture of someone always ready to leap from his chair to chase a story. Riverhouse, he said, typing as he chewed. A facility linked to St. Luke's. Closed in 2001 after a handful of paperwork scandals. Not exploitation scandals. Just messy procedures. They housed young mothers, many of whom used aliases. And Thomas, Lena asked. Thomas Rourke. Taught music at a small private school in Cambridge for a time. Before that, played guitar for a couple of indie bands. Released a self-published album in 1997 called Riverhouse Sessions. See that? Same name? Noah spun his laptop to show her. The cover showed a row of wooden houses by a river, lit by amber light. Lena's chest tightened. Riverhouse. The thread connecting the fragments no longer felt like a metaphor. Where is Thomas Rourke now? She asked. Teaching in a school district near Portland, Oregon, Noah said, scrolling. He got a small studio. Not famous, but known among musicians. And Ruth? Noah shrugged. Harder. If Ruth was a pseudonym, and Parker too, we are chasing a name written in steam on glass. But there is one lead, the snowy night your neighbor mentioned. Foxford had a major blizzard on November 1-2, 1995. Local paper mentions a stranded car near the town road, pulled free by a man named Jack Hart. Here you're Jack. The article calls him a mechanic, probably a reporter's mistake. Lena laughed tiredly. Jack liked to help. He always did. Noah tilted his head. Len, would you consider a commercial DNA test? Not to find parents immediately, but to spot distant relatives. If Ruth or someone connected ever used one, you might show up. Lena looked at the pizza box, suddenly hungry. Yes. Let us do it. They logged onto the website and ordered a kit. Lena rinsed her mouth, then filled a small tube with saliva. Such simple gestures for something that could alter her life. Before Noah left, he glanced at the journal on the table. You holding up? I do not know, Lena admitted. I thought my whole life was a straight story. Turns out it is stitched together in zigzags. Noah placed a hand briefly on her shoulder. A zigzag is still a straight line if you stand back far enough. Jack? Lena drove back to Foxford late at night. The porch light of 17 Willow still glowed like a fixed star. Jack sat at the dining table, his shirt showing faint detergent marks on the cuffs. Before him lay an open photo album, the page showing Lena in a blue floral dress, hair tied in pigtails. "Did you enjoy Boston?" Jack asked, his voice soft, as if afraid to touch something fragile. "I met Ava," Lena said. Jack's hand paused on the page. "So that is it." "I found Mom's letter," Lena added, her tone even. "In the attic." Jack closed his eyes, exhaling as if setting down a suitcase carried too long. "I always thought of this day." "So, you knew?" Lena did not phrase it as a question. Jack nodded. "I knew. From the start. Marion wanted you. I wanted Marion happy. And the moment I held you, I wanted you too, I thought. Love would be enough." Lena bit her lip. "You made love feel real to me." She hesitated. "Do you know who my birth mother was?" Jack stared at his hands. "I knew the name Marion told me, Ruth. But she wanted secrecy. I saw her only a few times. That snowy night when I drove Marion to River House, and once more, when we brought you home. After that, Marion kept the rest to herself. And Thomas Rourke." Jack's usually gentle eyes hardened like river stones. "Thomas was part of Marion's life before me. He came once, after you were home. They spoke on the porch. I stood in the kitchen, watching through the curtain, like seeing two people dance a waltz whose steps I did not know." "Were you angry?" "Yes. And no, you know me, I got mad, then went to fix a squeaky cabinet. But later I learned to think like this. People live parallel lives in their heads, but only one is lived out. Marion chose the life with me. I am grateful for that. The others, they were background music." Lena sat across from him, her hand brushing the album's edge. "Dad," she said, "tomorrow I want to find River House." Jack nodded, as if expecting it. "Go. If you need a driver, I will take you." "I can drive myself," Lena smiled. "But I want you with me." Jack smiled back, eyes damp. "Then I will go." River House. River House was gone. At the old address, there was only an overgrown lawn and a wooden sign. "New residential project, contact for details." But the small stone chapel of St. Luke remained, its gray roof mossed over, its stained glass windows intact. Mrs. Ellis, the church's silver-haired caretaker, peered at them over chain glasses as Jack gave their names, and Lena said she had been born at River House. Then she led them into a room that smelled of old wood. "I am not allowed to show you files," she said, her voice shaped more by conscience than by rules. "But I have my memory." She told them, young women came and went like rainstorms. One called Ruth. Brown hair, brown eyes, quiet. She arrived in the summer of 1995, stayed in the corner room that looked onto the river, read many library books. A woman named Marion often visited, bringing cakes. A man named Jack drove them back one snowy night. Just as the stories said, Ruth left a few days after giving birth, leaving behind a letter with no address, only these words. "Please love the girl, as I cannot. Do not look for me." "Parker is a name I borrowed." "She borrowed Parker," Mrs. Ellis repeated, "because she loved a novel with a heroine by that name. She said it felt like a warm coat." "Do you remember where she came from?" Lena asked, her question feeling like she was casting a net too wide over the river. Once she mentioned Chicago, the woman said, "And a street with old oaks. But my memory is like frosted glass. I do remember she loved the hymn Nearer, My God, to Thee, though she was not very devout." Mrs. Ellis rose, opened a drawer, and brought out a plastic box of keys. After some searching, she produced a small, worn one. "Here," she said. "The corner room key. I kept it out of habit. I do not know why I am giving it to you. Only that I should." Lena took the key. It was cool in her palm, scratched faintly down one side. When they left St. Luke, a thin rain had begun. Jack opened an umbrella, and the two of them walked beneath it like parallel exclamation points. Portland, Oregon. In the weeks that followed, Lena's life split in two halves. One half in Foxford with Jack, cleaning the house, selling furniture, watering Marion's hydrangeas. The other half in Boston, working contracts, reading the journal, calling Ava to ask about procedures for unsealing records. The DNA kit was mailed off, and every night before bed, she imagined an email arriving. You have a potential relative match. Noah sent her a link to a small performance in Portland by Thomas Rourke. The video was blurry, the man's voice rough and low, the song carrying a chorus. If I had a river house, I would leave the door ajar, for every ghost and memory to find their way this far. Lena stared at the face on the screen, early 50s, gray hair, blue eyes, cradling the guitar like part of his own body. Thomas, the man who had likely stood on her porch in Foxford in 1996. Speaking of the roads not taken, she booked a ticket to Portland. Jack looked at her calendar and said, I will watch the house. Noah pressed a slim notebook into her hands. Write everything down. Portland dripped with rain. Lena found Thomas's studio, a converted wooden house on the outskirts, marked Rourke Studio. She had not made an appointment, only sent an unanswered email. The door opened when she knocked. Thomas stood there, staring at her the way someone stares at a melody they almost remember. I am Lena Hart, she said. My mother was Marion Hart. Thomas leaned on the doorframe. At a certain age, names are no longer just sounds. They are keys unlocking locked drawers. He invited her inside, brewed coffee, poured it into 2 chipped enamel mugs. Marion, he said, setting the mug down. She loved autumn in Massachusetts. Hated winter, but loved toast on snowy mornings. She is gone, Lena said softly. Thomas closed his eyes, nodded. I guessed as much. Otherwise she would be here herself. You knew about me. Yes. At least that you existed. I came to Foxford once Jack disliked me, as he should have. I never demanded anything. You were theirs. He hesitated. Background music. You had another child, Lena asked, remembering the journal. Thomas smiled sadly. Yes. Years before Marion. I was young, reckless, in love with a girl from the theater troupe. We had a baby, but I left with the band. She gave the child up for adoption. I never forgave myself, but life flows like a river, Lena. I tried to become a decent man, belatedly. I did not know her name back then. Later, with social media, someone reached out, a woman named Maya. We tested. She is my daughter. Maya, Lena repeated, tasting the name. Where is she? Oregon, he said with a small smile. Coincidence. She works at a university library. Her name's Maya Collins. She is funny, sharp. If you would like, I could. He paused, waiting. Lena nodded. I would like to meet her. Maya Collins met Lena at a cafe near the university. Arms wrapped around a stack of books, hair tied in a messy knot. She looked Lena up and down, inhaled like someone about to dive, then broke into a grin. Well, she said in English. Then switched into broken Vietnamese. She had once studied in a course, making them both laugh. Hello, I am Maya. Lena told her story. Maya told hers. Raised in Seattle by a good family, her adoptive mother a nurse, her adoptive father an electrician. Growing up, she always felt like someone was counting time with their fingers, somewhere in the background of her life, until she found Thomas. He is not perfect, Maya said, but he is willing to learn a new song. They talked about Marion, about Jack, about River House and Ruth. Maya opened her laptop, logged into a DNA site. You already sent your sample? Good. The system takes weeks, but sometimes distant matches are already listed. Let us see. She typed, then looked up. There is a second or third degree match. In Illinois. Name, Amanda Parker Stein. The name Parker struck like a match in a dark room. Parker, Lena whispered. Could be coincidence, Maya said carefully, but it could also be. She stopped, eyes brightening. Amanda works at the Chicago Public Library. If Ruth ever mentioned Chicago, they looked at each other. For the first time, the zigzags inside Lena seemed to point toward a meeting place. Chicago. Chicago in autumn was crisp and dry. Lena, Jack. And though she was not sure how she would agree, Noah came along too. I need to witness this part of the story, Noah said, waving his reporter's notebook. Jack told him he could. As long as he did not write anything, Lena was not ready to share. The Chicago Public Library loomed like a civic palace. On the third floor at the reference desk, Amanda Parker Stein looked up when Lena gave her name. Lena Hart, Amanda repeated slowly. I got a DNA match notification with someone by that name. Her eyes flicked from Jack to Noah, then back to Lena. We should talk somewhere private. In a small conference room with frosted glass, Amanda set a cup of tea before Lena. I do not know where to begin, she said, fidgeting with her fingers. Strangers pop up in these systems all the time. But some names make your heart stop. Hart was one of them. Why? Noah asked, then smacked his own hand as if to remind himself he was here as a friend, not a journalist. Amanda smiled faintly. Because my mother Ruth Parker once told me about a family in Massachusetts. The Harts. I am her daughter. Born in 1989. She had me too young, but my grandmother would not let her give me up. We lived in a small apartment in West Ridge. She worked as a waitress, then in an office. In 1995, she disappeared for a few months, said she was taking care of a relative. When she came back, she was quieter, but almost lighter. Later she told me she once helped a woman adopt a baby at a place called River House. She ran from Chicago because she feared judgment. But really, she feared my grandmother's eyes most of all. Lena sat in stillness. Did your mother Ruth ever say the woman's name? Amanda shook her head. No. She just said, a polite lady with a good husband from Massachusetts. She said it was the only right thing she did in a wrong year. She is gone, Lena asked, her voice like rain. Amanda nodded, eyes damp. 2019. Cancer. She asked to be buried under an oak tree. We found a cemetery with one. I think it was the only thing she carried from her past the oak. Jack placed his hand on the table. Thank you, he said. You do not know what this means to us. Amanda took a deep breath. I have a box of my mother's old things. Unsent letters, train tickets, a small key she called, the corner room key. She told me, if someone ever comes looking, give them the key. Amanda opened her bag and produced a small silver key, nearly identical to the one Mrs. Ellis had given Lena, except for a different scratch. I think you are the one. Lena smiled, tears falling as suddenly as April rain. From her necklace she drew the key she had been carrying since St. Luke's, wearing it like a charm. The two keys lay side by side on the table, like notes resolving into a chord. Thank you, Lena said, taking Amanda's hand. Thank you for keeping this. The lawyer's fragment. Back in Massachusetts, Ava called Lena. Good news, she said. With what you have provided DNA matches, testimony I can file to open part of the record. If the birth mother has passed, the law allows partial disclosure. As for the father, the file lists unknown. That means Ruth did not name him or had it redacted. Let us do it, Lena said. Ava warned it would take weeks. Lena learned a new way to wait. She tended Marion's garden, cooked Jack's favorite split pea soup, and every evening called Maya to talk not just about secrets but about movies, books, or her neighbor's new puppy. Family sometimes grows in strange soil. When the records finally opened, Ava summoned Lena and Jack to her office. Your birth mother's name was Ruth Ann Parker, Ava said, sliding them a copy. Born in Evanston, Illinois. Father, Daniel Parker. Mother, Charlene Parker. No birth father listed. Anything else about River House? Lena asked. Ava nodded, turning a page. There is an internal memo. Marion signed the adoption with a pledge to cover Ruth's medical and lodging costs. No contact required afterward. The file was processed by a junior attorney, me. I would nearly forgotten I was once that young. Jack leaned in, murmuring. Marion always handled the details. There is one more thing, Ava said, her voice slowing. Attached is a sealed envelope labeled for Lena, upon reaching 25. Marion must have intended to tell you by then. but it stayed here. Lena nodded. Ava broke the wax seal and unfolded a handwritten letter from Marion. Dearest Lena, if you are reading this, I never had the chance to sit with you and say it aloud. I am sorry for letting a secret live too long in our house. I did not tell you because I feared you would think love here was a costume, not flesh and blood. There are 2 things I need you to know. 1, Ruth did not abandon you. She gave you away as someone who could not keep a candle lit in the wind, passing it into steadier hands. 2, you have a sibling somewhere, not through Ruth but through Thomas. I do not know where. But I believe threads find each other if we let them loose in the air. Forgive me. And let this house have more windows than I ever gave it. Love, Mom. Lena finished reading and looked at Jack. He nodded. Thomas Maya, he said, stringing the connection. Lena smiled through tears. The letter felt less like an ending and more like an opening. The lawyer on the other side. Some afternoons, Lena sat on the porch with Jack and Mrs. Whitcomb, listening to the old woman talk about the town's retired lawyer, Mr. Lawson. He was witness to half the papers in this town, she said. He keeps a filing cabinet bigger than a wardrobe. If anyone knows, it is him. Lena found his office, a dusty room where the wall clock ticked at an old rhythm. Mr. Lawson, his hair white as chalk, asked her name and rummaged through drawers. Hart. He pulled out a slim file. Authorization form from Jack Hart, granting his wife Marion Hart the right to complete an adoption if he was absent, in case of severe weather. Quote, Witness, me. We signed it on a snowy night. Do you remember anything else? Lena asked. Lawson's voice slowed into memory. Jack and Marion came here, eyes shining like people about to bring home a plant. They did not say much, just asked where to sign. I asked them. Are you ready to hold the unknown? Marion said. We will learn. And then they did, Lawson said, his tone suddenly tender, like a lullaby. Do you know what it is for a family to learn to love a child? First you learn to hold. Then to listen. Then to tell the truth. Lena nodded. I am in the truth class now. The thread tightens. A message from Maya came on a clear evening. Len. The system flagged a new match. My maternal grandmother, Charlene Parker, has a cousin in the database. And there is a man named David Stein who once lived next door to the Parkers. Amanda Parker Stein. That is the name Amanda took after her mother married him. She checked her family papers and found a photograph. Ruth holding a newborn in 1995, the wristband reading, Baby Parker. The picture was taken in a room with an arched window. Maybe River House. Lena sat up straight. Amanda. She typed back. Could you send it? The photo arrived slowly, like a boat pushing through ice. Lena opened it. Ruth looked young and tired, but her eyes glowed. The infant in her arms that was Lena, or at least the first version of the name she would carry. Light poured through the arched window, shadowing the room. Jack stood behind her, looking at the photo, his hand on her shoulder. She looks like you, he whispered. Maybe that is what photographs do, Lena said. They find the likeness. The next day, Ava called. The records are complete, she said. I can confirm your birth mother was Ruth Ann Parker. She passed away. As for the father, not provided. So, that is it, Lena murmured, feeling a strange sensation both whole and hollow. Not quite, Ava replied. One note slipped from the file, a card from a Chicago law office, Stein and Associates. On it, someone had written, If needed, ask David S. David Stein. Lena sent the name to Amanda. That is my stepfather, Amanda replied. He is a lawyer. My mom married him when I was 9. He is. Good. Want me to ask him? Lena inhaled deeply. If you feel okay, ask if he knows anything about River House. That evening, Amanda called on video. David says he once helped my mom send a small donation to River House, like paying back after the birth. She was obsessed with not owing anyone. He remembers the name Marion on a slip. He also kept an envelope she asked him to mail to the baby. But it had no address. He never sent it. Now he wants me to give it to you. What is inside? Lena asked, her throat tightening. A note. If you find this, know I left not because you were not enough, but because I was not. And a plastic hospital band, the one from your wrist. It reads, Baby Parker 11 per 02 1995. Lena closed her eyes, imagining the cold band against her skin, the smell of disinfectant, footsteps echoing on linoleum. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you for coming, Amanda said. Secrets are like light bulbs. They stay dark until someone flips the switch. Opening the windows, autumn passed in shades of red and gold, as if painted in advance of its ending. Lena hosted a small dinner at 17 Willow. Jack cooked a stew from his grandmother's recipe. Mrs. Whitcomb brought apple pie. Noah arrived with a cheap but cheerful bottle of wine. Ava came late, carrying a box of gummies. They sat around Marion's old dining table. The lace tablecloth still fainted with lavender from the drawer. So what do we have here? Noah recapped, his reporter's voice slipping out. A child born at River House. Mother, Ruth Parker. Father, unknown. Adopted by Marion and Jack Hart. An old lover named Thomas Rourke who has since found his own daughter, Maya Collins, now an unexpected kind of sister to Lena. A steadfast lawyer named Ava Patel. A neighbor with a sharp eye, Mrs. Whitcomb. A small-town lawyer, Mr. Lawson. A kind stepfather, David Stein. A flood of DNA, and a pocket full of keys. And a house that needs more windows? Jack added, smiling, recalling Marion's letter. And an oak tree in Chicago. Amanda said from the laptop screen, joining the meal by video. Where Ruth rests. And a river house that no longer stands, Ava said. But its stories still walk among us. Lena looked around the table and felt something simple and large. Family is not a map with fixed borders. It is a sketch in pencil. Lines layered, erased, redrawn, until a shape emerges. She stood and lifted her glass. To Marion, she said. To Jack. To Ruth. To Thomas. To everyone who laid a brick in this bridge. They clinked glasses. The sound rang like a small bell. One last journey. At the end of November, Lena flew back to Portland. Thomas picked her up in an old pickup. They drove to the university library where Maya worked. Outside, drizzle hung over the black trees against a gray sky. Have you thought about visiting Ruth's grave? Maya asked, as they sat by a window, watching the rain. Yes, Lena said. And I want to. They flew to Chicago. Amanda met them at the gate, hugging Lena like a rain-soaked sister. They drove to the cemetery and found the oak tree. A small headstone read, Ruth Ann Parker, 1976 to 2019. If I had a river house, I would leave the door ajar. Lena smiled in surprise. Amanda explained. She loved a song by a local musician, about a house by the river. Lena knelt, pressed her hand to the earth. I am Lena, she whispered. I came late, but I came. Wind chased dry leaves across the ground like tiny mice. A soft rain fell, not enough to cover, just enough to make everything brighter. Jack stood back, leaving the moment untouched. Noah, this time still in Massachusetts, texted, You? Okay. Lena snapped a photo of the oak tree and sent it. He replied, Okay, like an unfinished answer. Return and continuation. Winter came. Foxford lay white and silent. One evening, Lena and Jack pulled Marion's old armchair near the window and watched snow fall through the new panes Jack had just installed. Lena told him about the oak in Chicago, about Amanda, about how Maya imitated Thomas's singing voice to tease him. I think Marion would be glad, Jack said. I think so too, Lena answered. She placed 2 keys, the one from Mrs. Ellis and the one from Amanda, on the coffee table. I am going to frame these, she said, so that when people ask, we can tell the story. Each key is a chapter. Jack nodded. And our house key, who does that open for anyone who carries a piece of the puzzle, Lena smiled. Jack smiled too, eyes shining. In a letter from Portland, Thomas wrote, I am re-recording Riverhouse Sessions. This time I am adding a track called Willow Street, Quote, "I would like you to contribute a laugh at the end." Lena read it aloud. Jack laughed, saying, "Your laugh sounds just like your mother's." Noah called, asking if she would help him write a piece about River House, not a scandal story, but a record of the quiet kindness in those rooms, the young women, the families learning to tell the truth. "We can use pseudonyms," he said, "or no names at all." "Write it," Lena told him, "but write it as someone inside, not outside." "That is the only way I write," Noah replied. Ava sent an email. "I am pushing a proposal at the state court to ease unsealing records when birth parents are deceased. Can I use your story as an anonymous example?" Lena agreed. She thought of all the girls who might grow up with the same questions, and hoped they would find their answers sooner. Mrs. Whitcomb appeared one morning with a box. "Found this in my garage," she said. Inside were a stack of old CDs, and a Christmas card where Marian had written, "For a future with more windows." The old woman sighed. She always wrote like someone who loved the wind. "I love the wind too," Lena said. The last layer, not the end. One night, Lena dreamed of River House, a white wooden building by the river, arched windows, a door left ajar. She stepped inside and saw Marian's hand on Ruth's shoulder. Outside, snow fell quietly. Inside, a baby cried sharply, then calmed when someone lifted her. Thomas stood on the porch, strumming a short tune. Jack was in the kitchen, making tea. Everyone seemed younger, older, and exactly their right age. Friends passed through, as if at a festival. Noah, Ava, Maya, Amanda, Mrs. Ellis, Mr. Lawson, David Stein, Mrs. Whitcomb. Each placed a fragment into her hands. She pieced them together, piece by piece, until an image appeared, not a sharp portrait, but a house with glowing windows. Lena woke and heard the wind rushing through the trees outside. She rose, went to the living room, and cracked a window. Cold air poured in, carrying the scent of snow. On the coffee table, the 2 keys still rested like notes waiting to be played. She remembered Thomas's lyric, "If I had a river house, I would leave the door ajar." And she thought, "I have a house on Willow, and I will leave the window ajar too." The next morning, she drove to St. Luke's and returned Mrs. Ellis's key, thanking her. On her way home, she stopped by Mrs. Whitcomb's, letting her taste a new cookie recipe. That evening, she called Maya to describe the thin ice on the river. Maya described the Portland rain. Amanda texted a photo of the oak tree glowing in winter sun. Lena brought Marian's journal down to the kitchen, opening to the pages of 1996. In the margin, Marian had written in pencil, "Every secret can be peeled back layer by layer, each time showing something new." Lena smiled and wrote beside it, "And each layer is another way to name love." Outside, snow still fell. Inside, the lamp glowed warm. The living and the gone sat together in that space between 2 stories, the one already told and the one still being written. Lena poured Jack some tea, set a cookie on his plate, and opened her notebook. She wrote the first line of a new book, not to publish, but to remember. This is the story of a house on Willow, where secrets are not veils but a gentle kind of light. A place where we learned to open the window, even in winter. And with that, this layer closed, leaving the next to open. Epilogue. 6 months after the night Lena cracked open the window, the house on Willow felt lighter. Jack finally fixed the squeaky kitchen cabinet this time, leaving the hinge just barely creaking, he said, "So we remember how quiet it once was." The 2 River House keys hung in a wooden frame. Jack built himself, next to Marian's wedding photo and a picture of Ruth holding the newborn under the arched window. In the center, they mounted the plastic hospital band Amanda had brought from Chicago. 3 small objects. 1 long story. Noah published his feature about River House as an anonymous chronicle. No villains, no sensationalism, just a record of people learning to tell each other the truth. The paper opened a reader's letter section. Notes arrived at the Foxford Library like small birds. "I was adopted too, and I am okay. I once stayed at St. Luke's. Thank you for naming my fear." Noah brought the stack to 17 Willows. Mrs. Whitcomb dabbed her eyes. Jack joked, Looks like our kitchen is a newsroom now. Ava moved like water, patient and steady. Her proposal to open sealed records when birth parents had died passed its first hearing at the subcommittee. Lena did not testify. She sat in the back row with a paper coffee cup in her hands. But when a middle-aged woman said, "I just want a name to put on a grave," Lena knew why she was there. That night, she wrote in her notebook, "Some doors do not open with keys, but with stories told at the right moment." Thomas released Riverhouse Sessions Reprise. The final track was called Willow Street. It ended with Lena's recorded laugh in the kitchen, clinking glasses, Jack asking, "Is it recording yet?" In the liner notes, the thanks were only initials, JHMHRAPMCAPAPS, and all the rooms that ever left the door ajar. The CD arrived in Foxford. They played it on Marion's old player. When the chorus came, Lena said, "Leave the background on." No one turned it off. Maya grew used to texting daily life instead of DNA results. A stray cat learning the garage, a maple changing color early, an outdoor movie rained out. She called Jack Uncle Jack and shared a lentil soup recipe for open window Sundays. A monthly dinner at 17 Willows, where anyone could stop by, at least long enough to open a window a crack. Amanda managed a visit, carrying a jar of soil from her mother's oak. Lena mixed it into the hole for a young oak she planted in the yard between Marion's hydrangeas and Jack's favorite step. The wooden marker read, "Ruth Ann Parker gone so another could stay." Where Riverhouse once stood, a housing project rose. But St. Luke's placed a wooden bench facing the river. A small plaque read, "If you have a house by the river, leave the door ajar." Lena and Jack walked there sometimes, sitting quietly, listening to the water slip past the stones. Back home, life continued quietly. Lena took small design projects for the library. With Amanda editing drafts over email, they argued playfully over commas, ending every note with hugs. Jack taught a teenager how to saw straight. Mrs. Whitcomb planted dahlias, declaring, "Every color fits secrets that have been set free." Each night, before switching off the porch light, Lena glanced at the keyframe, not to mark time, but to remind herself time was flowing the right way. On her birthday, she wrote 2 letters she never sent, one to Ruth, one to Marion. The one to Ruth said only, "I stayed, as you hoped." The one to Marion was a promise, "I will keep opening windows." She slid both into the kitchen drawer where Jack kept matches. That night, the first snow fell soft. Lena cracked open the kitchen window, letting in the cold air as the kettle whistled. She thought, endings are not closures, but learning to leave a small gap for the wind, enough to breathe, enough for someone to knock and know they are home.